Welcome to the podcast of the Political Page blog with commentary from an attorney and entrepreneur on the political and social issues of the day, from a rationalist, libertarian, and often irreverent perspective. This is Political Page, and here's what's on my mind today. Hello and welcome to the podcast of the Political Page blog. This one was on the 11th of July, 2019, and it's entitled, A Puzzlement of Democrat Lemmings. The Democrat candidates are hysterical lemmings streaming headlong over a socialist cliff, but why? You know, much has been written about the utter shock of the American media and the chattering classes when Trump was elected in 2016, and that happened notwithstanding the fact that Nate Silver of 538 gave it a 99% guarantee that we would have President Hillary Clinton. You know, immediately after the 2016 election, there was a brief bout of navel-gazing as they considered if, seriously, that if should have been a clue, if their bias might have skewed their prognostications. Now, predictably, that umbilical regard was short-lived, and they comfortably concluded that the failure was simply a minor statistical glitch. They were almost right, and they returned to their echo chamber. And you know what? 2 years later, they still don't get it. Not only do they not get the 2016 election, but they remain willfully blinded to the very existence that half of the country is what Clinton dismissed as a basket of deplorables. Consider the current crop of Democrat candidates and their wild stampede to the hard left in a center-right country. So bizarre are the positions espoused by each candidate as they scrape and claw over the dismembered corpses of their fellows to summit ever higher pinnacles of discredited leftist theory that the Republican ads for the general election need consist of nothing more than video clips of the Democratic candidates making their own pronouncements. It is suicidal. It is a puzzlement of hysterical lemmings streaming headlong over that socialist cliff, and it makes no sense. Hence the blog title, A Puzzlement of Democrat Lemmings. Did you know, by the way, as an aside, that there's no formal term for what a group of lemmings is? They're not a flock, they're not a pod, they're not a herd, and wags sometimes refer to them as a squeeze of lemmings, but that's Monty Python. But their unfortunate behavior was for many, many years a puzzle, worthy of the current Democrat candidates, and so I have borrowed the appellation of a puzzlement from Rodgers and Hammerstein, The King and I. Look it up, it's a great movie. But look, the same thing really infects both sides to some degree. I mean, it's the basis of the parties that determine the primary. So the Republicans run more right in the primary, Democrats run more left. They both try to veer back into the center for the general election. But let's be honest, the Republicans do not self-immolate in the primaries, but the Democrats, especially this year, they are committing harakiri in front of the White House, like a Japanese soldier that just emerged from the jungle and found out that they lost World War II. Why are they doing this? Enter the media and the talking heads. The coverage of Donald Trump is nothing close to neutral. Everybody knows that. Did you know the coverage for Trump from the beginning of his presidency has run 92% negative stories to 8% positive? I mean, that is in direct contrast to what happened for Barack Obama, who got 60% positive coverage from the media. It's worth restating. Everything we've been hearing in the news for almost 3 years is 92% negative. Adolf Hitler would fare better in the press. Now, for the public at large, which is much less stupid, by the way, than its betters in the media assume, the result has been to remain loyal to their original perceptions of their candidates and learn to distrust the media. Did you know that 3/4 of the Americans now distrust what they hear from major media as either biased or overtly false? So let's consider that for a moment. Half of the country is approving of Donald Trump at nearly 90% levels, right? That's what the Republicans do for their approval. I think it's running about 87% approval for Donald Trump. But the media is reporting at over 90% levels on the other side, on the negative side. That disconnect between what half of Americans believe and what is reported has never been more egregious, I think, in our history. And since much of the left associates only with others of similar perspectives, and they tend to coalesce in D.C. and the left coast and New York City, what they read in the media is the echo of what their contacts are mulling over their cocktail parties. This isn't new, of course. Remember in 1972, that New Yorker film critic, her name was Pauline Kael, I think, she famously sniffed, and I've got to give you this quote, it's just perfect. Quote, "I live in a rather special world. I only know one person who voted for Nixon. Where they are, I don't know. They're outside my ken, but sometimes when I'm in a theater, I can feel them." Ooh, she can feel them. This may stand alone as the single most honest assessment of the way progressives look at the rest of America until the FBI agent Peter Strzok snorted that he could smell the Trump supporters at a Virginia Walmart. But the media agrees with the disdain of the left. The talking heads agree with the disdain of the left. Anderson Cooper and Rachel Maddow agree with them. And the left is lured into a false sense of progressive security. Nothing else can explain the positions taken by these Democrat candidates over the last 2 months. Consider this dichotomy between progressive applause lines and reality. Okay? Warren, Sanders, and Harris all want to abolish private health insurance. Totally. You guess how many Americans want that? 15%. That leaves 85% of us appalled by it. Harris is promising an executive order effectively repealing the Second Amendment. Biden wants to outlaw all guns except smart guns, which actually don't exist yet. Now, leaving non-existent technology aside, repealing the Second Amendment by any means has national support of about 20%. And the flip side of that equation, obviously, is that 80% of us don't want that to happen. Every single candidate on that Democrat stage have rejected any limit at all on abortions or the federal funding of them. In short, each one of them favors late-term, partial birth abortion up to the date of delivery at taxpayer expense. Even leaving out the taxpayer expense part, do you know what the support is for late-term abortion? 13% in the United States, not to batter a deceased ungulate, but that also leaves 87% of us opposed to that position, and they all took it. Which brings us to the primary subject of this particular election, which is illegal immigration. Did you know that all of the Democrats on the stage, except for 2 of them, want crossing the border illegally to be just legal? Well, okay, it'd be a civil violation like overstaying at a parking meter. Deterrence be damned, eh? And every single candidate up there, every one of them, wants to give any illegal migrant who manages to crawl across the border free health care for life if they can just make it here. Forget deterrence. Let's offer them a guaranteed lottery jackpot instead. Oh, want some more? Harris wants slavery reparations and $100 billion more freebie dollars to buy homes, but only if you happen to be a black person. I guess the rest of us can just live in one of those storage pods that they're renting out for $1,400 a month in the blue state mecca of Los Angeles. Biden, on the other hand, wants to put health company executives in jail for what he considers false advertising. Bernie Sanders wants to wave a magic wand and forgive $1.6 trillion, that's trillion dollars of student debt loaned out by banks. Warren is open to the federal government confiscating all your firearms. Tax rates 50, no 70, no 90. And the support for these idiocies? Well, National Review is being kind, and they said none of them reach 50%, but boy, are they being kind. Let's take a real look at it. On reparations, 21% of likely voters approve. On student loans, there's some tepid support for some form of assistance, but wiping out $1.6 trillion in loan assets by executive order has not quite yet been polled, nor has the ensuing complete collapse of the federal banking system. Over 80% of Republicans, and amazingly half of all Democrats, oppose banning the sale of handguns. Confiscation is so ridiculous it isn't even asked about. All of these extremes are openly blathered by the candidates before these cheering social justice warrior debate crowds. And no one becomes a politician because they dislike applause lines. But these are also supposedly astute politicians with a weather eye out for the national polls. Does anybody seriously believe that open borders, gun confiscation, and a race to crush baby skulls before the first contraction hits are winning general election platforms? And yet off they race to outdo one another in great paroxysms of socialistic, nihilistic dogma. You know, it's as if there's no such thing as a video camera, and their statements are going to be forgotten and forgiven by a mild Donald Trump when it comes to the general election. For good Lord's sake, they have saved the Republican National Committee hundreds of millions of dollars in advertising by writing the script and performing it for us on national television already. Trump would hand them their electoral heads in a handbasket with just one of those fiascos. What could possibly explain such electoral seppuku? It has to be the same reason that they and all of their ilk missed the 2016 election in the worst polling and prognosticating fail since Truman gleefully held up the headline saying Dewey defeats Truman. Don't misunderstand me. This is a very good thing for Republicans, but it is a puzzlement. Thank you for tuning in to the Political Page podcast today. Original blog articles, complete with a lot more information and great links to original source material, can be found anytime on politicalpage.net. That's political, P-A-I-G-E, .net.